more session. You got it in you? You got it in you. And then on to college football or high school football. You're leaving early. What time you need to leave? I think that was the plan on being done at noon, wasn't it, Barry? I think he's got it. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, all right. Okay. Everybody got that? I just want to make sure everybody's aware of all the scheduling pickups that we got with the kids. Okay, well, so enjoying the marriage bed. It starts with a discussion of the differences of men and women. And not to spend too much time on this, but to show there's differences that we all are aware of. And again, don't freak out if this doesn't fit you and your spouse. These are the general stereotypes that are true 70 to 90% of the time, depending upon the culture. But the difference of the men and women, we'll start with this big idea. The men express facts, okay? Women, more the emotions. So what we just did in the last session, yes, ladies are better. It's what Gary Smalley calls the hidden marriage manual, just more intuitive. They're more able to share those emotions. And it's why men communicating and feeling words can be very challenging, can be very difficult. Men, and again, I would put in front of these tend to be, because it's not always true. It can be flipped in some homes. Men tend to be objective, where women tend to be personal. This is why if you want to get your wife to watch a NASCAR race, you just got to point out one of the cars and tell her a story about the driver's marriage. And it's why when we're watching baseball or football, my wife's favorite moments of a game is when they turn the camera for 3 seconds to one of the players' spouses. And just from that 3 seconds, my wife can tell you everything about their marriage. Oh, I think they're doing good. You can't tell that from just a picture on the screen for 3 seconds. But we'll get in the car after church on Sunday, and Amy will say something like, "Did you see Brenda?" I go, "Yeah, saw Brenda." I said hi to her. "It's not going well." I go, "It's not going well." I said, "What's the problem?" She goes, "I could just tell." I said, "You could tell what?" I think she's struggling in her marriage." "Did you talk to Brenda, Aim?" I didn't have to. I could just see by the way she did her hair today, by the way she was dressed, and by the way she walked, I could just see it all over. I'm going to call her this week. I'm like, "Golly, you can pick that up from seeing her," because I call it on women a sniffer, right? Women walk into a room and they automatically start going, and you can find the hurting, broken person and move toward that, because men are more objective. This is why you will never arrive somewhere on vacation with family or friends and your dad or brother walk out of the house. You'll never hear a woman get together with another woman and ask about what kind of gas mileage you get on the way here. You'll never hear a woman ask the question, "What time did you leave?" Because what time you leave, I need a specific amount of time so I can see how long it took you to get here, so I can know if I can beat that when I'm going to visit you sometime. But this is just, again, general differences. Men tend to want the basics, just enough information, but women want details. And guys, details communicate emotional connection. My wife told me years ago, "I don't want the details of your day, okay, from phone calls with staff." I used to think she's in the car, she's hearing this phone call, she's getting all the information, but I hang up and she starts asking me questions about it, like where I'm now repeating myself. And the guy kind of going, "This doesn't make any sense. I already said this, and you were here to hear it. You should have all the information that you need." But she wants me to communicate with her. She wants details, because details, tell me more, is communicating connection. Okay, men can detach from their surroundings. Okay, we don't hear crying babies. We don't care how dirty the house is, but the home is the extension of the wife. Okay, this is why when we were first married, I show up to the stairs going up to our bedroom, and she has towels stacked like a barricade on the second step. And I come walking around the corner and I see it, and I'm like, what is this? Like, why would she do this? And this is how my mind's processed. I'm focused for just a second on the towels going, Well, to me, this is one of the most inconsiderate things a person could do is I step over the towels, and as I walk up the stairs, I get up to the stairs, and she'll say, hey, did you see those towels? Yeah, and I was wanting to talk to you about those towels. Why would you block the stairs with the towels? And she said, well, I kind of thought you would grab a stack or two on your way up. And I said, I didn't think that at all. I didn't think that at all. Like, why would I do that? Because a man can be attacked. One of my favorite Gary Smalley stories is when, and he shared this for years, but he said, I plopped down on the recliner and I kicked my shoes off, and it was 10 o'clock at night. I was tired. I was ready to rest, and Norma goes, she goes, what? She goes, can you go take those to the room? He goes, oh, take them to the room? Why take them to the room? Well, I just don't want them here cluttering up the living room. And Gary's like, it's just you and me. It's like there's nobody else here. Why can't I have the shoes here? And this is what Norma says. And she's taught women to do the same thing. My wife has this same conversation with me now after hearing it with Norma. Norma says to Gary, you could have a heart attack right now. He goes, okay. And I have to call an ambulance. And the ambulance people come over, and your shoes are there cluttering up the living room, and they may think I don't keep a good house. And Gary has to remind her, I'd like to keep the focus on the fact that I'm having a heart attack. Let's keep the focus there for just a second. That's more important than a cluttery house. But a guy can invite friends over, no problem, to the house and it be cluttered and a mess. But my wife is like, no, I want people to feel special when they come here. I want the place to be ready. And then in specific line with the session we're in, when it comes to sexual intimacy, men are microwaves, women are crock pots. Okay? Women take all day to heat up, guys. Okay? Ladies, know this about us, please. We are microwaves. We need no prep time. We're ready at a moment's notice. You just let us know. This is a big deal. Because I hear from couples in counseling, I hear guys tell me, okay, listen, I spent all day, I thought all day that tonight was the night, only to learn that tonight was not the night. And so I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, so what are you doing? What are you doing to turn your wife on? And again, I'm one pastor who's sick and tired of feeling as though every time we talk about sexual intimacy, we have to go onto Satan's turf to discuss it. This is not his turf. This is God's turf. And so I believe we should be discipling young men, especially with this. Because I had a guy in my office years ago, and he said, there is barbed wire fence going down our bed. Like, there is no enjoyment. She doesn't want to be with me. And I asked him, I said, well, what are you doing to prepare your wife? What do you do to get her in the mood? What do you do to help her get ready? And this is what he tells me, and I'm not kidding. He says, well, to turn her on, I every now and then plaster myself up against the shower door. Do you see why we need to be teaching young men? I'm like, what part of her walking in the bathroom and going, did you not get a clue? That doesn't turn her on. Guys, it's an important question to ask your wife. What turns you on the most about me? Great car ride home question. I asked my wife that question years ago, true story. Baby, what turns you on the most about me? And you know what she said? When you are on the family room floor wrestling with Carson, it makes me want you. Carson, get over here. What, Dad? Come here, buddy. Come here. You know why? Because your wife is turned on to you when you were engaged in the home. Men are microwaves, women are crock pots. Years ago, I started helping guys with this because they didn't think this through clearly, and they weren't taught. I grew up independent, fundamental, king, but I told you, I didn't learn about sex. My dad thought he'd have the talk with me in the parking lot of a La Quinta on the day of my wedding. We know what La Quinta means. La Quinta means next to Denny's. So we're walking over to Denny's, and Dad's like, this will be the time to have a little talk with them about it. Dad, this is not the time. I'm 22 years old. There's nothing left to say. I go into marriage. 7 years into marriage, my wife's in bed one night reading a book on how men think. It's not a real thick book. You can read it in about a night, and it's Shanti Feldhahn's book, For Women Only. I encourage every woman in here to read that book, to download it. For Women Only. It talks about how your men are turned on visually. And in that book, my wife's reading it. Shanti Feldhahn was training her, and so was Beth Moore, right? Because, if Beth Moore said it, Jesus believes it. So we get what Beth Moore said about the subject. And it's just buck fever. That's buck fever back there, everybody, in case you were wondering. That's but you got to read that book because it's talking about this right here. So what I want to do, I want to give the guys a list so you can start the conversation, but this is how to prepare your wife for a night of intimacy. And in our home, we actually have something called the crock pot candle. And when that candle's lit, it means tonight's the night. And I'll have guys will ask me after this session, guys out there at my table will ask me, hey, Pastor, do you have one of those candles? Okay, it's any candle, okay? It's not a special candle. You go to Yankee Candle Workshop and buy the candle. But when that candle's lit in our home, it means tonight's the night. And it allows you to prepare her all day. So guys, give her an NST before you leave the house. Call her when you get to work, okay, for no purpose other than to connect with her. Ask her about her day, everything she's done from the moment you've left her till then, how she feels about it. Just connect deeply with her, okay? Get home, do something domestic. I found another thing that turns my wife on is the sound of the dishwasher, okay? Turn it on. The secret is you don't even need dishes in it. Just get the thing turned on. Clean or dirty, it doesn't matter. Just turn the thing on, spray some 409 around the house, and remove distractions. I have a 12-year-old distraction, a 14-year-old distraction. Most nights the candle's lit, I'm running around the house going, stay away from your mother. Leave her alone. Stop talking to her. And Amy will be like, what's going on? You stay focused. I haven't run the ball down the field all day to be fumbling it on the 5-yard line. I'm not going to let these kids do that to us. Guys, download a lovemaking playlist. You got songs? Oh, we got songs. We're children of the 80s. We got great songs. And this is the song. This is the song. I can walk in the kitchen at any moment and just start singing this. No, I had the time of my life. No, I never felt this way before. Come here, baby. Come on, jump. I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you. Jump into my arms. And we're ready to go. Ladies, but you need to prepare him. Men are microwaves, women are crockpots. Show up naked. That's all you got to do. We don't need you calling us during the day to connect with us. We just talked about this with surroundings. You'll be shocked how distracted we can be. It's actually something we use from time to time to make it go longer. I'm just being honest with you. But we talked about the daily delay, the weekly withdrawal. The third thing we didn't address was the annual abandon. The annual abandon ignites intimacy and adventure. And again, I hope you see the daily delay was in the Song of Solomon chapter 1. The weekly withdrawal was in the Song of Solomon chapter 2. Chapter 3, they get married. Chapter 4, they're at the Dallas Fairmont. Okay, they're having a honeymoon. And then we pick up, after they've been living in this marriage for a while, we read about the annual abandon in the Song of Songs chapter 7. And it's the Shulamite woman, now the bride, speaking to her shepherd king. Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages, their annual abandon. Let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded, if their blossoms have opened, and if the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. The Hebrew for I will give you my love is bow, bow, chicka, chicka, bow, bow. That's the Hebrew. This is a daily delay is in the home, 15 to 20 minutes a day. Weekly withdrawal says, I'm coming to take you out of the home, and we're going to have time away from the home and the craziness of that home. An annual abandon says, let's not only get away from the home, let's get away from town. Let's go away. You don't have to spend a ton of money on this. People tell me all the time, we don't do date nights, let alone an annual abandon, because of money and kids. Okay, there's ways to solve both of that. There's so many great websites out there that you can do a local staycation, but you can get away from what feels like your town. And you can do swapping with other families for children. You can ask the grandparents. Get creative, but prioritize the annual abandon to remind yourself what it might be. And on that, I encourage you, here's another download I have for you. It's called the 52 question menu. It's a drink menu. You can get it on our church website. Barry can make it available for you. But we designed this about 8 years ago because what we discovered was that couples were not having conversations like we're having right now, a candid conversation. And we said, okay, if we're going to send them on an annual abandon and we're going to encourage them to talk about intimacy, we got to find out how many couples are even willing to have the conversation. And what we found is most Christian couples grew up in homes that never talked about it. And while they participate in it in the marriage bed and as husband and wife, they don't ever have conversations about what else it could be, what else we could do, how else we can bring creativity to the bedroom. We discovered that a lot of couples, and sad for me, thought when you added the word creative to the word sex, it somehow meant perverted. And we've got to move away from that idea. And so we created this menu, and we passed it out at the end of speaking on sexual intimacy one Sunday at our church, and back at the doors you would leave, and you'd get this menu and a 2-hour burning candle. We said we want every married couple, emphasize married couple, to go home, light this candle, and have a 2-hour conversation this week about sexual intimacy. And I'm in the Ozarks. Next week, one Ozarkie and Bubba came up to me and said, hey, Pastor, I found out you light that candle under a ceiling fan. It only takes about 45 minutes. Well, that was not the point. The point was that you'd have a conversation. You can download that, but we break the menu. It's into 4 categories. The first 10 questions on that menu are safe questions we believe no matter where a couple is in their journey, they can ask the questions. But then we broke down the rest of the menu into these 3 big categories. Frequency, best question we've ever been asked on our church website is how often should an evangelical couple have sex? Yeah, I said, and I responded, and I said, compared to other world religions, I have no idea. But I do believe we should be leading out with this, and you can, and even schedule it. We can make fun of it's Tuesday and Friday nights, or it's how many times a week. It's questions we have to have. How often do you desire to have sex? We find out couples don't even have that simple of a conversation with one another. Frequency. Performance. How creative can we get? And I'm here to tell you, as a pastor, there's plenty you can do to bring creativity to your bedroom without bringing anything from the world into your bedroom. You can do plenty. And I have to share this because even in conservative Christian churches, this has found its way in. I don't understand how, I just know it's how the enemy works. For a husband to view pornography would be sinful. For a wife to view pornography would be sinful. It's somehow crept into the church, but if we view it together, it's okay. No. It's no difference if it's a husband alone, a wife alone, or the couple together. And it's something Dr. Swindoll always taught us in seminary. Sin will always take you farther than you want to go, and it will keep you longer than you want to stay. Apart from just the sinful and moral wrongness of pornography, understand this idea of neurochemical tolerance. It's for the same reason an alcoholic no longer gets drunk on one beer. Pornography is changing the brain, and you don't stay with just the flat images on the screen. You move to videos, and then videos move to encounters. And when I'm sitting down with a couple who says, how did a third person end up in our bedroom? I said, well, I almost guarantee you it started with pornography. There's plenty you can do to bring creativity to your bedroom without inviting anything from the world into your bedroom. I encourage you. You can take it outside the bedroom. That's honestly why I put the trampoline on the cover of Fun Loving You. Now, I encourage you to use it at night, okay? We don't want any of that. But there's plenty. You can take it outside the bed. You can take it into other rooms in the house. Talk about another great book I'd encourage you to get, The Sexually Confident Wife by Shannon Etheridge. And in that book, she describes positions. I don't have any book. Gary and I wrote the book, The Language of Sex, and Norma Smalley would not allow us to go into that great of detail in the book. It was a great book. Then she edited it. And but Shannon wrote the 12 positions. Amy bought the book and was reading it. One night she's reading about these different positions, and I'm going to say this too. All 12 positions she mentions in that book are vaginal positions. That's another important thing I feel compelled to share to the church. But as she's reading it, my wife starts cracking up. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, I have read this one position 3 times, and I still can't understand what she is describing. Would you read it? I'd be happy to. Let me see that real quick. I think with a little stretching, we could probably make that one work right there. And some of you are like, I can't. Does he know where he is right now? Yes. Again, why do we feel like we have to go onto Satan's turf to discuss it? This is God's turf. Get creative. Bring candles. I mean, I know this sounds so simple, but boy, couples just, to bring in candles, you're like, well, I'm kind of insecure with my body. Well, fine, make it a votive. Put it in the far corner of the room. Make him squint, but bring in candles. Plenty you can do to step up performance. And then endurance is just allowing it to go longer. Taking your time with it, not being rushed. Everything can't be about the quickie, but you can have that conversation as well. And here's what I encourage you to do. If you choose to download the menu, if you bought Fun Loving You, it's in chapter 8 of that book. We've been talking about safety, so this is very, very important. I do not encourage you to go home and just start asking each other all 52 of those questions. You start with them individually, okay? And you circle every question on that list. Let the wife start. You circle every question on that list you feel safe answering, okay? Then give it to your husband. Why? Because we believe women set the boundaries in the bedroom, okay? Then you hand it to him. And out of those questions, he can circle the ones he feels safe answering. Start with those questions. Because I call them, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so and from years ago, these questions are not what I call softballs to Sosa, okay? They're not simple, they're not easy, they're not, they're difficult questions to answer for some. And depending on the family of origin, depending on any trauma that might have been brought into this marriage from past experiences, you have to start this conversation on the basis of safety. This is a safe conversation. May your bedroom be enjoyable, but may it be safe. The marriage bed kept pure. Marriage should be honored by all, esteemed as highly valuable, and the marriage bed kept pure. Another download I have for you that I'd love for you to take a look at is Conversation Starters. I put this together one week. It was the week the movie 50 Shades of Grey was coming out. And again, going on social media and seeing people talk about this and act like this is no big deal. I just went through the scripture. Every biblical consideration is a text to remind people before they mind-numbingly open up their lives to this filth, that they would understand this is God's plan for the marriage bed. You can download that. It's a great conversation starter. And then the McCluskey, I take this before I jump into the Proverbs with you to close out our time. This is called the McCluskey Love-Making Cycle. Okay, developed by Christopher McCluskey. And the 4 big areas you need to think about. Now, the questions of performance and endurance and frequency, that's one thing. But this is the love-making cycle. This is from start to finish. Atmosphere. This is men are microwaves, women are crockpots. That's where it starts. That's setting the mood. That's preparing the room. That's thinking about it and not just walking into the kitchen. Now, guys, you have to understand this. You're like, well, we hadn't talked about it all day. We haven't thought about it all day. And now I just walk into the kitchen at 9 p.m. I tap her one and say, hey, you ready to go? And she's like, no, I'm not. Okay, so there is an atmosphere. There's a lead up. Now, there doesn't always have to be. There can be moments where, you just like it's spontaneous, it's fun, it's a quickie. But just like eating fast food every day, it's not healthy for you. You can't have a fast food meal every day. You need to think about the slow meal. You need to think about the meal where we're enjoying this food together. So think about the atmosphere. The arousal, this would be the foreplay leading up to it. And again, I love what Tommy Nelson from Denton Bible says. The sound of a husband vacuuming is foreplay. So there's a lot you can do for the foreplay. But the arousal, really getting in the mood, moving out of just the atmosphere. And for some, atmosphere can be an all-day process. For others, it may be a few hours. Arousal may be an hour or two. And it depends on how long of a break you've taken between times of intimacy together. And then apex, another word for climax. But then you don't want to forget about afterglow. This is why sometimes making love at night right before you go to bed, which is often for most couples, I understand, is not always the best idea. It's why I love about the annual abandon, to have morning sex, to have afternoon sex. I just love looking out at some of you right now. You've been laughing the whole time now. He is giving some very, very practical application and giving us moments. You're not even looking at each other. This is my point. Some of you, I've made a point about what works, what doesn't work. When I make a point about what works, you look at each other. I've seen 3 of you in the last 5 minutes look at each other and go, I am proud of you. I'm saying that. That comes from the heart of a pastor who loves you. But because this is a lovemaking cycle, to think about afterglow as much as we just talked to you about atmosphere. To think about, okay, what does after look like? And this is where guys go, just say it, just say the word, just say the word. What's the word, guys? Cuddle. The guys, no man said it was the women. Cuddle, cuddling. Like a little cuddle time after that. And you're like, okay. So this is the cycle. Now watch. We're talking about keeping the marriage bed pure. And I think about talking about this with my kids. My kids, they're not hearing this right now. They've heard this talk more times than I can count. And there have been times, like even last night, we were having a late lunch, like mid-afternoon lunch before the deal. And we were talking about just tired and how this event last night was going to, change things around. But because you put us in a very nice room that had a private bedroom. And Carson sees us. And his comment to me is, don't be fumbling it on the 5-yard line, Dad. So I go, well, then you two go get your own room. That would absolutely help, too. You're getting in the... And my son thinks that this is how he thinks I turn on his mom. And this is true. When the candle's lit, he'll be like, oh, boy, Corinne, candle's lit, right, the whole thing. He thinks this is how I turn on his mom. He thinks to get his mom in the mood, for me to turn on Amy, this is what it takes. Me dancing and doing this. Wah, 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 wah. And I go, Carson, that's not at all how it works. But we think about it all throughout the day. So I'm okay with talking about this. And can I just say, the conversation is, because it's no longer a talk. We're going to keep on line with the marriage bed. But I also want to bring into it how you should talk to your kids about this. Because experts now tell us the conversation about the body, about intimacy, even about sex, and again, age appropriate, needs to start around the age of 4. And the reason for that is if your children will talk to you openly about this conversation, there's not a conversation they won't talk to you about. Okay? And as far as protecting our children today in a sex-crazed culture and preventing our children from becoming victims or perpetrators one day of criminal behavior, starting at age 4 is the best time to have this conversation. I think about this as we go into Proverbs. If you don't keep the marriage bed pure, again, ending where we started last night, marriage should be honored by all and the marriage bed kept pure. If you don't honor marriage and keep the marriage bed pure, at the end of your life you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. Telling this, I just picture a dad sitting on the edge of his son's bed sharing this. Son, I want you to understand this. I want you to know what I'm talking about here. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. And then it moves into the enjoying of the marriage bed. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. Again, I think there a passage, again, reminding us that marrying young is a good thing. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? Enjoy the marriage bed. And all throughout Song of Solomon and throughout the Proverbs, we speak of 2 things, exclusivity and enjoyment. The marriage bed should be exclusive between a husband and a wife for a lifetime. And thank you, First Baptist Dallas, for being a church that still says a husband and a wife for a lifetime and is clear and solid in that biblical teaching. And that's where I want to end our time as we talk about 5 keys to exclusivity and enjoyment in the marriage bed. Straight out of the Song of Solomon, we read, talked about it last night, first of all, curiosity. My dove in the clefts of the rock and the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face. I want to draw you out. I want to spend time. It's not just about the bed. Sex is at the end of the lovemaking cycle, not at the beginning. The preparation going into it. Show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. One of the problems we have today in the grind of life is we remove curiosity and fascination from the marriage and we replace it with duty and responsibility. Coming back to the place of curiosity and fascination. Gentleness, another key. I love this. Your breasts. This is now the Shulamite bride. They're now married. That wedding took place in chapter 3. She's exposing her naked body to Solomon. And he says, your breasts are like 2 fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. We have we live out in the country, all sorts of deer and all sorts of fawns. And I tell the kids, if we want to see these fawns, we got to walk quietly through the woods. We don't go running up on the fawns like, ah! And so I tell the young guys, you don't come swinging out the bathroom like Braveheart, okay? It's gentle. And this is hard, but you find the balance. It's being a gentle and strong lover. Gentleness. How about endurance? Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, which is morning time. It can't always be about the quickie, guys. I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. Let's take our time with this. And how do you bring endurance to? There's so many things you can do. But guys, here's what I want to encourage you to do tonight. I want you to throw a couple of pairs of shoes in the dryer and lock the bedroom door. Okay, just let that sit in for a second. I know you're going to figure that one out in a second. And start it early. And I think it's okay that you train your kids. They know they're here because of what you two enjoy doing. Okay? Let them know, hey, your mom and dad, we just call it a date night. We're having a date night at home. Okay? We're going to go in. We're going in at 8. And some of you are struggling with it. Like, nope, it's never. They have to act like it never happens. No, come on. Come up with code words. We have code words. When our kids were real young, our code was, hey, Amy, you want to work on the budget tonight? That was our code word. And it stopped when Carson one day goes, you guys sure work on the budget a lot around. Are we having money problems? No money problems, but working on the budget. Because remember, when they're young, you can spell it. And then they start learning how to read. You can't spell it anymore, so you make up code words. And then when they figure out the code words, they already know. Okay, you're the primary author of your child's heart. Don't allow culture to be the primary author. Don't allow culture with this issue to be the first one writing message on your child's heart. Let it be you. Your mom and I enjoy each other, Carson. And we're not going to be embarrassed about that. Endurance, safety. We've talked about this. Guys, every woman in here wants to hear this. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Speaking in a positive way about the body. There is no flaw in you. And then frequency. Eat, friends, and drink. Drink your fill. Some translations say, oh, lovers. This says, of love. It's to have plenty of time to enjoy this. To enjoy one another. And I'm going to end with the story I heard of a sweet couple married over 50 years. They were married 50 years, and they were at that place where they would lay down in bed at night, and they would face opposite directions as they fell off to sleep. And one night, she felt her husband's hand on hers, and it worked its way up her arm and down the inside of her arm and over the small of her back, and then back up to her neck and rubbed around her neck, and then came back down her back and up over her thigh, and then stopped. And she was like, whew. She's like, that was good. She turned over to her husband and said, honey, that was wonderful. Why did you stop? And he said, oh, I found the remote. Thank you, First Baptist Dallas. It has been great being with you this week, and I love you guys and appreciate Barry having me in. Thank you.